This is a story that I'm not supposed to be telling, a family secret that I'm not supposed to know about. When my grandfather was younger, he became the principal of an elementary school. He was in his late 20s, early 30s, and despite being young, he was a born leader. He was a great principal, and everyone loved him. I can attest to it as I attended multiple award ceremonies for him, and the respect and admiration he received was crazy. There was a young boy at the school who was having behavioral issues in class, and my grandfather saw that the kid didn't have a lot of parental support, so heckled in his father and had a talk with him about spending more time with his son and just a general parenting session. It turned out that all the boy needed was his dad's attention, and after a few weeks, he was a happy model student. Whenever my grandfather would leave school late, he would see the dad was playing basketball with his son after he got home from work. It was one of those moments that he took pride in being able to make a difference in people's lives. However, not everything had such an easy solution, and my grandfather found himself having to deal with an employee, Stanley, the janitor, who was showing up to work drunk. Stanley was an alcoholic with a mean streak, and my grandfather tried on multiple occasions to deal with his behavior. Finally, one day, Stanley showed up so drunk that my grandfather sent him home and called the superintendent to let him know he was going to fire him the next morning after he sobered up. He then warned them to let him deal with it when Stanley was sober because he was not a stable person. As it goes in these kinds of stories, the superintendent was furious and decided that he was going to call Stanley himself and fire him. Despite my grandfather's warning, no one called my grandfather to tell him about it either, so he was completely in the dark and thought he could deal with it in the morning. Stanley was furious and went to the school that evening. He searched my grandfather's included and tore things apart until he finally had what he wanted. He was in a blaze of fury, and on his way out he saw a father and his son playing basketball. He walked towards them and pulled something out of his trousers. It was a gun. He then proceeded to shoot the little boy, killing him instantly. The father was upset. He was hysterically crying, but somehow managed to get the gun away from Stanley and shoot him. My grandfather was called to the elementary school immediately by the police because there were 2 dead bodies. The little boy and Stanley were dead. But what was even worse was the crying from the father and him saying that he couldn't save him. It was clear that he would never forgive himself for that day. My grandfather was pulled aside by one of the police who had searched Stanley for evidence. They had found a hit list of the people that he was willing to kill and all the addresses of those people that he had retrieved when he searched the offices. My grandfather was number 1 on that list, so if it weren't for that father, it's likely that I would have never been able to meet my grandfather, and possibly my mother and grandmother would have been killed. If Stanley had been able to complete his mission to this day, I get goosebumps whenever I hear that story, and it's just so chilling. My grandfather never uttered a single word about this after his initial recount, and my mother made me swear to never tell him I knew. He carried the weight of that boy's death on him until the day he died. Edit. I just looked up records online, finally found some info, and spoke with my mother. There was another man who Stanley killed. He had killed another janitor that evening, and he had thought the boy and the father had seen him. So then Stanley tried to shoot the father and wrestled with the man to get the gun. In that process, it went off and killed the boy. Sorry for the mistake in the story. It makes it almost worse. This happened almost a year ago, and it's all thanks to my little underscore of a husky. She was a super cute 10-pound fluff ball at the time this happened. I was living in a pet-friendly apartment complex, and I had just bought her. I picked her up around 10 a.m. that morning and went to visit my parents' house so they could meet her. I stayed all day and didn't arrive home until 8 o'clock to 8:30 p.m. We walked in and I introduced her to the apartment, played with her, took her to pee, and went to bed. During the night, she woke me up twice to pee and whined a bit since she was in a new environment, but she wasn't too loud, and I quickly calmed her down by putting her on my bed, and she crawled on my head and fell asleep. Since I read that huskies are very active dogs, I decided to take her on her first walk on the sidewalk beside the building. As we started our walk, we passed the side of the building that shows the balconies. I lived on the 3rd floor, and the guy who lives directly below me was standing on his balcony following me on his phone. I felt a bit weird about it, but I didn't think too much about it since the landlord had actually told me before. He mentioned to her that he enjoyed me living above because I was quiet quiet. Also, a lot of the tenants in the complex were having a fit over my husband would just hold her and pet her whenever they saw her, though I thought he was just filming her to show his or to talk about her later with me. I spent the whole day with her, getting her familiar with me and her new home. The night rolls around and I took her out before I went to bed around 11:30. I walked past a red car that was running but didn't have his lights on, so I couldn't see who was in the car. I didn't think much about it because it wasn't unusual for people to sit on their cars waiting on someone. I lived right beside a college and have many college students living in the building, so I thought maybe they were waiting for someone so they could head off to a party or something. While I didn't think much of it, I was still aware of my surroundings since I am a young woman alone at night. My puppy finally used the bathroom after 20 minutes of sniffing around, and I picked her up and walked past the car to go inside. The driver's side suddenly opens and a tall man steps out and yells, "Are you allowed to have that dog?" almost aggressively. I turned around and noticed it was my neighbor and replied, "Oh yeah, you're allowed to have dog shit." I was confused as to why he was asking that since he's lived here longer than me, but I answered him anyways. He points at my dog. "No, you dumbass. Did you get permission from the landlord to have that thing?" As soon as he cursed at me, I clutched the dog closer to my chest and just nodded, still confused and now a bit frightened. "Seriously, Ikno, you are lying. You don't have permission. I videotaped you this morning and sent it to the landlord, and she said that she had no clue about her. I know he's lying because I did tell her about my dog. Booty just hadn't paid the deposit yet since it was the weekend, and she was fine with that. So I explained to him, but he cursed at me more, calling me a lying underscore, saying we kept him up all day and night with her running around and stomping. Know that this was impossible because a dog her size couldn't stomp or make noise to keep him up all night. She hasn't barked or hauled once and just whines at times, but that's not loud enough to keep him up all night, especially since I was asleep next to her and I slept fine. I finally interrupted and apologized to cut Thick and Evil short because he was just getting more angry as it went on. He pauses and says, "Shut up, you don't mean that, and I'm calling the landlord tomorrow to report you and your dog. I swear, if she keeps me up again tonight, I'll mess you up." I freeze at that point because I know he meant it, even though we never had any problems until that day. I've heard him harassing other neighbors and even pulling out a gun on one over their dogs. However, because he's buddy with the landlord and doing drugs and probably having sex, he's never gotten in trouble. Despite being scared, Middenbass suddenly gets pissed off for getting threatened for no reason, and I stammer out, I have permission to have this dog, so I'll be there with you tomorrow when you try to report me. You're lying and upset because you hate dogs, even though you live in a pet-friendly apartment, which was a stupid move on your part. Yes, I know, I was stupid, and the words just vomited out of my mouth. Hey, just go on before he beat your ass. You're not going to do anything tomorrow, but get rid of that damn dog. I didn't know there was someone else in his car as I was standing closer towards the driver's side. My fear completely took over, and I just ran away and into the building. I was on the second floor landing when I heard the lobby door slam and footsteps pounding up the stairs. I let out a scream and hurried up the third floor, down the hallway and into my apartment. I locked all the locks and put my door's stopper against the door. From outside my window, closer towards the end of the hall, I hear laughter and then they walk away. I locked myself in my bedroom and cuddled my puppy as I cried. I stayed up all night, afraid that they would try to break in and kill me and my dog. The next day, I called my mum to pick me up and didn't come back until 2 weeks later when I moved out. I brought all of my male cousins for extra protection that day. In the end, I had to move back in with my parents because I was afraid to be out on my own, but I ended up getting my deposit in last month's rent back. I never reported the couple because I didn't know their names and just didn't want to get involved with them anymore, and I felt discouraged because my landlord practically took its side and just rushed the process for me to leave by quickly giving me my money back if I didn't involve her boss or the police. After that day, I learned she wasn't the landlord, but merely the apartment maga. Looking back, I wondered if I could have sued. This past Monday, my co-workers and I returned to our hotel from a day of work out in the field. Rebecca and I walked into our rooms, and as we stood outside of our rooms, I opened mine and I saw someone in the bathroom. I said, "Hello." Nobody answered. My first instinct was that it was a cleaning lady in there for some reason. And then I saw me bag with my clothes in her hands. I said to my co-worker, "There's a woman in me room." Then I asked the woman, "What are you doing with my stuff?" It gets a little fuzzy here because I can't remember everything I said and what she said, but she gets mumbling about how her key still worked, how it still worked, and that's how she got in. I was in shock, and she was obviously very flustered. Having been caught mid-robbery, she dropped my bags and fumbled around with her purse and a white plastic bag. By this time, my co-worker was behind me, watching all the insanity unfold. This woman was scrambling and walking towards the door, and I said, "What's in the bag?" thinking it was probably my stuff. And so she said, No, it's just my thanks. Just my stuff. I'll show you." And so she did. I looked, and I didn't see anything of mine. And so, since I'm obviously in shock at this time, I let her leave. I went into my room, and it's been ransacked. I did a quick look around to see if anything had been taken. All of my electronics were still there, and I went into the bathroom and I saw my underwear, my bikini, and my clothes shoved into my own bags randomly. Even my passport was shoved in there. Then I looked on the counter and I saw that she got into my medication. I'm not sure what was going through my head at the moment, other than I wanted it back, so I ran out the door to go find her. I ran to the laundry room downstairs and out to the sides of the hotel, and I didn't see her. I realized I was never going to find her, so Miko worker and I went down to the lobby to tell them what had happened, and then we called the police. We went back up to my room to wait, and I noticed that there was a metal bat on my bed, a little larger than those novelty wooden bats you can get at a baseball game. But there's also a flashlight on the end. She must have left it behind in a hurry. She also left behind a necklace that must have fallen out of her bag when she was scrambling with mine. I was mostly freaking out at this point because he thought that she had gone away with my medication that I needed. The police got there and took our statements and looked around the room as well. One thing that I noticed was that there were bits of drywall in the sink, and I pointed that out to the cops, but none of us really knew where it came from. We started looking at the door and the windows to see if she pried her way in somehow, but there was nothing. So we just kind of went with the idea that she had a spare key or something, even though the hotel front desk was adamant that there was no way that could be. The officer that came brought 2 more officers as backups because they thought the woman might still be in the vicinity, but after our statements were taken, there was nothing else they could really do, so they left. I sat down to finally make some calls to tell people, and as I'm on the phone, I'm thinking about the drywall in the sink, and it still didn't make sense to me. So I'm on the phone and looking at the drywall on the mirror and on the wall right above it. Then it hit me. I got my co-worker and asked her to help me pull out this mirror on the wall, and we took the mirror down, and there's a hole there just big enough for a desperate to squeeze through. I asked Brian and Rebecca if I should call the cops again to let them know that I found this, and my boss said there's still 2 cop cars in the parking lot. So I went down to tell them, and the female cop kind of rolled her eyes, but the young guy said, "I'll come check it out." They both came back up, looked in the hole, and found a pillow, blankets, cigarettes, clothes, and toothbrushes. This woman had been living in the wall behind my mirror for who knows how long. She had access to me in my room at all times. I know it might be hard to picture, but there was a crawl space about 2 feet wide in between the 2 rows of rooms. One of the officers called the original officer to come back and take pictures of this. She explained to him what was going on, and all I hear over the radio is, "No freaking way." He comes back, takes pictures, and it's just as mind be blown as the rest of us. Obviously, we packed up and left immediately. What's even crazier is she'd probably been there a long time. The last time we stayed at this hotel, I would randomly smell cigarette smoke, and I assumed somebody was smoking in their bathroom and it was traveling through the vents, but nope. A junker was smoking just on the other side of the mirror. She had access to the other rooms too. The holes in the walls were from a renovation, and the hotel hadn't properly patched them and just covered them up with the mirrors. She could have been hanging out in people's rooms when they were gone. Anyways, this was insane, and I'm taking a little time. This happened a few years ago when I was bartending in college. I was coming home down a stretch of divided highway at around 3 a.m. when I noticed the car heading towards me in the wrong lane. I doubted myself at first and thought Decker was on the other side of the highway. Sure enough, a white Ford sedan passed me at a really high speed, at least 90. It's worth noting for later that I also drive a white Ford sedan. I was used to drunk idiot drivers in the middle of the night, so I pulled to the side of the road and let them pass me. I had a moment of clarity and thought to call the police, thinking this person could hurt themselves or somebody else. The dispatcher answered, and after telling them which road and exit mile marker I was at, they told me they would ascend a car. The state police station was only a few exits away, so I figured they would send somebody and I would just drive home. As I headed back onto the highway, I noticed some lights a few miles ahead of me. I live in a more rural part of southeastern Pennsylvania, and traffic at 3 a.m. tend to be truckers and cops. The car gained on me as I was getting up to speed, so I stayed in the right lane and waited to be passed. Instead, they flipped on their high beams, making it uncomfortable to drive, and rode my tailgate. At this point, I thought I was going to be pulled over by the police, especially for the fact, considering I drive a white Ford sedan and had just called about a different white Ford sedan. So I grabbed my registration from the glove box. Suddenly, the car behind me audibly slammed on the brakes and stopped in the middle of the highway. They must have shut off their car because the lights went out and I saw what looked like the same Ford sedan from earlier. Still, I thought this may have been a police car. They have a roof rack, and it could have looked like I had reached for a gun in my glove box or something. I panicked and called 911 for the second time and asked the dispatcher if they had sent a cruiser to investigate. The dispatcher was a little curt with me and assured me that they sent somebody out. Dispatcher said, "We sent a trooper out to find Decker, sir." Me, I only ask because somebody is following me and acting weird. It could be a cop, and I think it freaked them out by getting my registration. "Are you pulled over?" "No, they didn't turn on their lights." "Okay, let me try to get to the trooper we sent out." As she was talking, the car again sped towards me and stopped inches away from my bumper. Again, their high beams were on, and again, they slammed on their brakes. I told the dispatcher, "I'm pretty sure this is not the police behind me." The car sped to my bumper again and turned their high beams on, this time laying on the horn. Hearing this, the dispatcher asked me what was happening. "What's happening? Did you honk?" "No, that's the car behind me. I don't think it's a cop. I'll try to get the trooper agent, but I don't think that's him behind you." For some reason, this is what shook me. Before that, I was thinking I would get pulled over and maybe get a ticket. Up until then, I was going the speed limit and trying to avoid getting pulled over. I told the dispatcher, "I don't care if I get pulled over. I'm speeding, and if they put their lights on, then I'll pull over." I started to accelerate, and the person behind me just kept up with me. Their speed limit was 55, and they kept on my bumper the entire time, but this time, they were swerving. I tried to signal for an exit and then bail on it, but they followed. At the next exit, I took the off-ramp and continued onto the on-ramp, and the car behind me followed the whole time. I thought about trying to go to a Wawa, a convenience store or gas station. That's pretty much the only populated place in southeastern Pennsylvania at 3 a.m. But the dispatcher and I thought that would be unsafe. She was calm and talking to a person trying to send police to me. The other person, maybe a supervisor, asked if I could drive to the state police station. Realizing that I was one exit away, I told her I was coming there, and she said that she would have troopers meet me outside. As I pulled off to the exit, the car followed me. I blew a few red lights trying to get to the police station, and the car tried to pull into the other lane to pass me or pull up alongside me. Once the police station was in view, I put on my turn signal, and the car slammed on its brakes again, turned off its lights and turned into a parking lot. The story kind of ends anticlimactically as I pulled into the police station and meth troopers. Two of them went to find the car, and I stayed with the third trooper. I thanked the dispatcher, and a supervisor and the state trooper escorted me home after taking a statement from me.